What does it do, YouTube? Welcome back to another episode of Scotty Says I'm your host. And today's episode is a difficult one, but I have to address it. And it has taken me a few days to put together my thoughts, and even then, in the midst of gathering my thoughts for this episode, another horrific incident has occurred before I could even get on the mic. And so I need to address the rot, the sickness in American society that results in the slaughter of innocent human beings, mass murder of elderly women and 9-year-old school children, and everywhere along the spectrum in between. And before too much longer, there'll be yet another one. Now, this latest incident in Texas, as it stands, 19 school children slaughtered. But this, as horrific as it was, as evil as it was, as much as it puts me in the mind of Sandy Hook, is simply the latest in what will be an ongoing long line list of these kinds of hideous crimes. The guns are too prolific. The madmen are too rampant. They're lunatics roaming everywhere amongst us. And believe me when I say this, it is not, as some would have you believe, a handful, a loner, a kook, an outsider, 1 or 2, 7 or 8. No. There are millions of them all around us, the most extreme of which come to our attention because of the barbarous crime they commit. But below that surface, the country is teeming with them. Supporters, those who fantasize, those who emulate, those who idolize. A hateful devil by the name of Gendron. Peyton, from here forward, he will be known as Hayton Gendron. Hayton went into a market of black people. He'd scouted it out, as you know. He was meticulous in his planning. He had an instrument of slaughter at his disposal. He was dressed in his body armor. And he went and butchered elderly black women because they were black. 87-year-old women, 70-plus-year-old women at the market getting items. Slaughtered. Assault rifle. Because they were black, you see. That is what motivated Hayton, the racism. And so, whereas the country is teeming with lunatics and murderers, yes, mass murderers even, I want to pay specific attention today to the race killer, the race mass murderer, the Hayden Gendron types. And regrettably, they are out there, thousands of them. They train in their fatigues, their camouflage, get up with their private facilities, and they have their weapons, and they practice, you see. The militias, they call them. Neo-Nazis, neoconservative, all types of names. They're alt-right, you understand. For me, for my purposes, I'm just going to refer to all these variations of white supremacists as the Klan. Okay? That's good enough. The Klan. And understand there's Klan in high places. Klan is infiltrated throughout law enforcement, throughout the military. Always has been now. Klan has always been in the White House. See? Goes back to the very beginning. And so, for this episode, I want to pay respects to specifically the victims of the Buffalo Race Massacre of May 14, 2022 in New York State. And I want to say their names, each of them. 86-year-old Ruth Whitfield. 77-year-old Pearlie Young. 72-year-old Catherine Massey. 67-year-old Hayward Patterson. 65-year-old Celestine Cheney. 62-year-old Geraldine Talley. 53-year-old Andre McNeil. 52-year-old Margus Morrison. 32-year-old Roberta Drury. And the heroic security guard who did exchange fire with the body armor garbed race killer. "55-year-old Aaron Salter. May somehow you all rest in peace. And condolences, deepest condolences to your families and friends and loved ones. You have to understand, ladies and gentlemen, that being black in this country has from the very beginning been an absolute nightmare. Now, so it's imperative that we look beyond the mythologies. And every cult and religion, they have their their founding mythology. And for America, the founding mythology is the country is built on freedom and justice. And you'll hear people say that to this day, white people. And others sometimes. And, you know, this is America. This is, we're built on freedom and justice. This is what we're about, you see. And they have such myopia to all the atrocities, all the heinous, horrific events that have taken place. They are so myopic to it that they don't understand that the freedoms they enjoy came at the expense of countless generations of other people. For example, the American dream. What is it? Really, what it really is an opportunity that was denied black people. It's an opportunity to own land, an opportunity conversely, black people were the commodity being owned. And that is where the great wealth of the nation comes from. Land and labor. You know? Land and labor. But it's somebody else's land, somebody else's labor. And you're getting them both for free. And so great wealth can be built, but there has to be an immense amount of pressure applied. An immense amount of violence has to be applied in order to force people who have lived for generations, millennia, thousands of years off their land. You have to exterminate them, essentially. And that is also known as genocide. And that's what happened to the people who were here when the Europeans got here. They moved them and fought them and pushed them, and eventually they exterminated them, except for a few pockets here and there that they put on little arid stretches of land. So you got a continent with all its bounty, absolutely free, except you need the labor. Well, we got a solution. Because, you know, I don't want to go out there and do that work. We'll kidnap a group of people, put them in chains, put them on boats, send them across the planet, and then we'll breed them. And their children, ad infinitum, forevermore, will belong to our children. Imagine how diabolical this mindset, this concept really is. And so that's why I say, for black people, there is no horror movie. There is no horror story, no Frankenstein, no Dracula, no ghost, no demon, there is no conceptual terror ever rendered that is worse than what the white man has put on the black man in America. Ever. It is simply the worst crime against humanity in human history. And so, the American dream for the beneficiary, based on skin, at the expense, based on skin, of an American nightmare for the other people. The ones we don't really want to talk too much about. And so this mindset, you see, of of being entitled to own another human being based on no less their pigmentation, their melanin content. This is such a despicable way of thinking, so repugnant, so abhorrent, that it is almost unimaginable that it is still so prevalent in today's modern world, but it is. The racists, and I call them interchangeably, I'll call them the white supremacists, I'll call them the racists, I'll call them roaches. I'll call them devils, monsters, scum organisms, the evil ones, the evils, the evils, the evils. They want war. You have to understand that. You have to breathe that in. You have to really get your mind around the concept. The racists want war. They still hate black people. Still. As I've said many times, you can't go that many generations and then it just disappear. That kind of a hatred, it's congenital. It's being passed down from one generation to the next, on and on and on. You wouldn't be able to get them to say it in polite company, but I feel certain that there is a fairly significant number of Caucasians who, if the truth were told now, want to own black people again. Would do it again if they could get away with it, if the right leader came along, maybe an orange devil kind of character with a Satan-esque appeal. The hatred is there, and it's real, and it's been there for centuries. Have to realize what this all really means. These aren't isolated incidents. Hating, idolized, killing Dylan, killing Ruth. See? And that's what they do. One leaves the roadmap for the other. Killing Dylan wrote some raggedy bullshit on the web or wherever, on Facebook or wherever, and then he goes off to church. Goes to a historic black church, killing Dylan. Goes in and finds the pastor and the Bible study group on a weekday evening in June. Coming up on the anniversary now. And after spending an hour praying with them, they welcomed him in now. They welcomed him in. And after an hour sitting and praying with them, he got up and pulled out his Glock and slaughtered them. Everyone shot them dead. Similar. Elderly women, primarily. He got the pastor of the church now. He was state senator. That's assassination in any legal definition. Left one person alive. He told her he wanted her to spread the word. What he done? You see, it was important to him, killing Ruth, that the story was told. He wasn't sure how it was going to play out. He didn't know he was going to get a Whopper with cheese and fries. He didn't know. He thought, hey, it's a possibility. It could go sideways. But he wanted to leave a roadmap, you understand? So that others, the rest of the roaches, could follow the trail. Do it this way. Now, 7 years, 8 years later, here's Hayden. Same thing now, Hayden. He's got the technology, so he live streams his slaughter. He wants to put it on the Roach network where they broadcast all their hateful rants. Shooting down old women at point blank range with assault rifles because they're black. A monster if there ever was one. And to very few people's surprise, they took him in unharmed. We still do not know if he got cheese on his Whopper or how that went down. You have to understand, the U.S. is founded on genocide and slavery. Not freedom and justice. No. A European arriving in America is more American the day he gets off the boat than I am, and my people have been here for centuries. Okay? He can step right past me in almost any capacity in this society and still have that foreign tongue dripping from his lips. Excuse me, move there, I'm trying to get by here. He got that pasty complexion, though. The country's for him. The Europeans embrace their own. That's why they're always talking about France and, Britain and the Queen. And the Queen is like, you spend so much time with that damn Queen. But I digress. These are just the various tentacles of white supremacy at work. Media, one of the most powerful. Propaganda wing. See? I believe, my strong suspicion is that the country, as it's constituted, will not long survive, not because of what any person or group of people do, but because at its core, at its foundation, there is rot. It's unaddressed. There is unrepentant atrocity. The very core of the society. And you have people who come from a long line of this way of thinking and being. It's baked in, it's who they are. Let me give you an example. Just in the 100 years between 18 and 1970, just in that 100-year slice. There were tens of thousands of these kinds of racist massacres perpetrated by European Americans against African Americans. Tens of thousands. Many we know of. There are 5,000+ documented lynchings in this time period. The Equal Justice Initiative painstakingly documented this. 5,000+ documented by this organization. How many more do you think escaped record? Black people going missing. Black people snatched out of jail in the night. The people who committed these atrocities, primarily white males, but white females seem to enjoy the festivities of a black man being tortured, maimed, and murdered publicly for spectacle. And so there are many well-documented cases because the white media, the white newspapers would cover it, would announce it, would advertise. Negro to be lynched on next Saturday. It'll be in the town square around about 5 p.m. Come on down. And they would. Why, European Americans from near and far would come. They'd come by train and buggy. What's that song? We get there if you can. They get there. And there might be 25,000, 30,000 of them packed into a little town that normally wouldn't get that much attention in 100 years. And they'd sell souvenirs, and they'd have, popcorn and a little bit of a singing in the beginning. I mean, it was a whole big spectacle lynching. And the victim could be anybody. If they didn't have anybody, there's somebody, got to be a vagrant in the jail you can snatch out, long as they're black. That's the only criteria. Got to have somebody to burn and shoot at and stab and cut pieces off of. Because, they would take souvenirs now. They'd take fingers and teeth. And they pass this down as an heirloom. Sick, twisted, deviant, devil behavior. They pass these pieces of the corpse, earlobes, toes. They pass them down from generation to generation. They take pictures with you've seen them, with the corpse swinging, with it still half burnt and limbs missing. Shot about 700 times, yes. Now, here's my point. All of these people, these tens of thousands of people, I say, if you add it all up, really, we're talking millions of white people, okay? And just in this century now, in this 100-year slice, all of them, of all of the murder, the documented ones, the undocumented ones, of all of did you know there were hundreds of what the media called race riots? I'm going to do a video for you just on this very subject. But they weren't race riots, they were racial massacres. White Americans would come up with the pretext to go into a black area of town and destroy it, loot it, kill, maim, drive the blacks into the river. Hundreds of these kinds of events. When you put it all together, it's the most grisly, gruesome set of circumstances any human being could live in, that you would be perennially and perpetually tormented by a group of people who hate you, who, yes, they even believe they have a right to own you, to sell your children, who despise you, and who feel your life is worth the same as spitting on the ground. And all these people, I'm going to say millions of them, all these millions of white people never served a day in jail, never paid a single penalty, never repented, never atoned for any of it. The sickest among them thought back about it in glee. The rest kept their mouths shut. Life moves on. All of these people, these murderers and these accessories to murder, all of these white people would have children. You think you get where I'm going with this? They all had children, and those children had children. And so you have millions of unrepentant slavers and murderers, and torturers, sadists of the worst sort, deviants most foul, millions of them procreating and breeding and passing their evil down, one generation to the next congenitally. And then there you see Hayden. The country was founded by racist monsters. Now, all the beautiful language, the prose, doesn't change the fact that Thomas Jefferson was a slave owner who had children by his slave, who enslaved his own children. Thomas Jefferson had 6 children by his slave concubine, underage lover, who eventually had to be rescued from the auction block once the old fella was dead. Liberty and justice, all men created equal. And of his 6 children, 2 of them didn't survive childhood, but of the 4 that did, all of them remained enslaved. The 2 girls escaped, and he instructed the pursuers to cease. His own children now, enslaved on his plantation known as Monticello. This is monstrous. No matter what words you use in your declarations of freedom. George Washington, slave owner, most foul, pursued one black woman who escaped till he died, till the day he died. He couldn't accept the fact that this woman got away from his clutches. Old George, the one who had a mouthful of slave teeth. Yes. monsters, and the monsters then had monster spawn, and so I don't see how the country long survives under these kinds of conditions. You see what's going on. They're storming the Capitol when they don't win the election. Trying to overturn the election by force. That's a coup. You know, you've done all this boasting about your democracy, the greatest democracy on earth. You just attempted a coup because this devil you had as your hero lost. He lied every day that he opened his mouth as president. And when he finally lost, barely, because he had 73 million, I believe, voting for him. Okay? But when he barely lost, the cult of evil said no. I call them Republicans. They said no, the election is not valid. We decide it's no longer valid and our guy won anyway. And they stormed the Capitol. You saw what happened. I don't see how the country long survives. It's infiltrated. And by infiltrated, I mean the racists and the white supremacists run law enforcement. Always have. Run the military. Okay? They're in the halls of Congress, the Senate, the House. White supremacists. Any right-thinking individual can do nothing except admit that if ever reparations were due in any case in human history, it is African Americans, descendants of slavery. And unless you are willing to pass that litmus test, Joe Biden, Barack Obama, and the rest, unless you are willing to say you are supportive of reparations for the evils that have been perpetrated against African American citizens by virtue of their race by the U.S. government, unless you're willing to stand there to cross that Rubicon, then I have to put you alongside the racists. You are with the white supremacists. Most of them have a thin facade. It doesn't take much, and then you ask them about reparations, and the facade drops. These people have denied, deflected, and deluded about the evils done to black people in this country for centuries. And to this day, you can't get an anti-lynching bill. You see what has been done to black people. As soon as that devil went and shot up the massage parlor down in Georgia, they went Asian hate, we gotta save the Asians. I'm like, do you see the amount of hate that is directed at black people every day in this country? I do. I've kept track of it. Go to Black Defense Network, I love it, for years. Every day there are hateful, racist atrocities, acts perpetrated against black people in this country. But you can't get a anti-black hate bill. You won't even discuss reparations. It's because you're complicit. I say the original terrorists of the Klan. Terrorism is not, Al-Qaeda didn't start terrorism. ISIS didn't start terrorism. White Americans started terrorism. They are the original terrorists. And so, reparations must be paid. Reparations are the ultimate litmus test for white allies. Are you for or are you against? Been primarily beside the modern day stuff. I've been primarily talking about a 100-year period from 1870 to 1970. I'm not even talking about 250 years of slavery. Okay, I didn't even bring that up in the reparations conversation yet. Well, now I have. But that's a separate, I'm just dealing with this 100-year sliver. Because once the Civil War ended, there was a brief period of around a decade of Reconstruction. And so you could say till around 1875 or so. Then the white supremacists start reverting it all back. And the only real difference by the time Reconstruction ended in 1876 or so was that now the racists agreed, the white supremacists said, okay, we will no longer sell you children. Okay, fine. But we don't value your life now because now you're no longer a commodity. You're not worth anything to us alive. The racists went from torture and maiming and enslaving to murder. And this is when, as Reconstruction ends, this is when this period of racial mass murder and mass lynching and spectacle lynching gets underway and kicks into overdrive. And essentially, these lynchings continue to this day. Now, they don't need to sneak around at night with hoods and ropes. Now, they just get an assault rifle and go and slaughter in a grocery store. Real quick and easy. You can kill 13, 14, 15 people just like that. Now, today, with the weaponry that's available to those who hate. And so the monster with his live stream and his plagiarized writings wanted to leave a trail. Hayton did. A path for his fellow roaches to follow. Because they want war, you see. They want to reestablish the old order. And for anybody who has any doubt about what the Confederacy wanted and the reason they left the United States and broke from the Union and the war started, if you don't believe me, just read their founding documents. The Confederacy believed that as white men, they were entitled to own black people forever, into perpetuity. And they were seceding from the Union henceforth so that they could pursue such goal without restriction. They were going to be an eternal slave state. And you see these youth today with the Confederate flag, young people. They don't allow in Nazi Germany, they don't allow for Germans to walk around with swastikas. It's considered a shame and verboten. And they have tried, the Germans did, to make some form of amends and atonement for the evil that they did for that 6-year period. 6 years. What they did to the Jews. 6 years. Now imagine 500. 400 from 1619 to 2022. Still to this day, denying, deluding, deflecting, refusing to atone, refusing to even repent, refusing to repent for the evil they have done. Senator Tom Cotton saying slavery was a necessary evil. Necessary for who? With your inappropriately named ass. Necessary for who? It wasn't necessary for Africans. Blacks got no benefit from it, only torment and torture, death and degradation. Necessary evil? You got it half right. It was evil. So the scum organism, Hayton, wanted to live stream his atrocity, wanted to leave a roadmap, a pathway for fellow roaches to follow, to commit similar deeds because they want war. You might as well breathe it in. The racists want war. They want to reestablish the order. They want to destroy black people or enslave them again. They fear genetic annihilation. Dr. Francis Welsing was right, I believe. And they'll tell you that. And so Hayton was just a grunt, an idiot, an imbecile at the bottom of the pole. But he listens to the elite white supremacists like Tucker Carlson, who have a platform to spew their vile ideology. White replacement theory and critical race theory, all of these are just euphemisms. You're afraid of genetic annihilation, and you'll lash out with any violence at your disposal to protest it. Critical race theory is just a euphemism for don't talk about it. All that stuff. Hey, listen, it's a long time ago. Everybody's cool now. Don't talk about it. Don't teach it. Just teach the mythology. Freedom and justice. Okay? That's it. Thomas Jefferson was an elite white supremacist, an elite racist. He probably didn't do too much of the beating. He had other people. He had the grunts, the idiots, the Neanderthals. He had them for that. The enforcers. He was free to write in his memoirs. He mused in his memoirs how black people didn't grieve their children like white people. Black people didn't feel pain like white people, you see. He had time for these kinds of speculations, pseudoscience, deviltry. And then, his sexual liaisons in the evening with his enslaved mistress, baby mama, who he started sleeping with when she was 13, 14. A monster. And there are monsters all around us, roaming. You see? Lurking. So beware the facades that many will show you. You have to understand how deep it goes. I used to always wonder, there was an old civil rights staple song, "We Shall Overcome." And I used to always wonder about that song. Is that it seemed to me something was being left unsaid. What? We shall overcome what? What is it that you're singing about? And that part, like with critical race theory, you don't say that part. But that part is the key part. Overcome European American hatred of black African Americans. That part is overcome white supremacy. That part is overcome white terrorism. That part is overcome mass racial murders and violence and lynching. That's what had to be overcome. Being forced to, being subjected to the very worst that the society could offer. The worst of schools, the worst food, the worst conditions to live in. Extreme, abject poverty, and then on top of that, terrorism. They were like, the African Americans of the time were like ducks in a little barrel being shot at. Nowhere to go, nowhere to run, nobody to help. Easy targets, helpless victims, like those old women in the top supermarket in Buffalo. What we had to and still have to overcome is the evil of white supremacy. That's what needs to be overcome, which, ironically, that's what they need to overcome. The problem was never with black people. So the wrong people are singing the song. But I understand the sentiment. Today on CNN, or the other day, I should say, I saw they asked the obligatory question, and the white media always asks this of black victims now. It's mandatory. They stick a microphone in one of the family members' faces, and they say, with the camera rolling, "Do you forgive the killer?" They say gunman. Sanitize it, And, true to form, there was a black woman who responded almost instantly with, "Yes, I do forgive. Forgive my performance. Yes, I do forgive. I'm a Christian, and so I have to." And that's a quote from this black lady. And there you have it now. Perpetual victimhood. Okay? Offering unconditional forgiveness to the unrepentant. No way that ends well. It's really like an invitation to just keep hitting us again. It's amazing to me how Christian black people are with everybody except each other. One of the shoppers who, fortunately, actually survived the carnage in the tops. He hid in the back and he wasn't shot. But he said it felt like it went on forever and the gunshots just wouldn't stop. And upon being rescued from that hellhole environment and speaking to the world media, he said, "I have no idea why he wanted to hurt us." I'm like, sir, the racist vermin himself told you why. He told you. Are you not listening to anybody? Have you ever looked at a history book? I didn't say read it. Have you ever looked at one? You have no idea why? Because you're black, sir. I know it's hard to get the mind around for a lot of black people. I do understand that. It was hard for me. to get your mind around the fact that this, in a real life situation, not a fantasy horror movie, but in the real world, there are variations of human beings on this planet who hate you to the point of wishing, hoping, working towards your extermination. And this hatred is based solely on your complexion. And even more terrifying, they have the means to harm you, to subjugate you, kill. And they've shown for the course of the last 400 years an eagerness, an itch, a willingness that goes to the point of a compulsion to kill black people. That's why, sir, and I'm glad you made it out. Now listen, I know this has been a difficult topic, and I appreciate you bearing with me if you made it to the end. And I want to ask of you, first of all, to throw me one of these, okay? Please subscribe if you haven't already. Leave me a comment now. Let me know what you're thinking. And by all means, stay safe. And until the next one, one love.